Welcome back to Wellness with Ashti, the podcast where we debunk common myths in the health and wellness space with science based facts. Today, we're talking about CGMs, which are continuous glucose monitors, and whether they are necessary for people who don't have diabetes or prediabetes. We're also going to be talking about another unrelated but interesting topic of oat milk and whether it's good for health, does it cause inflammation, and what's my personal opinion on it. So let's get into it. So, first, let's talk about what is a CGM. A CGM or continuous glucose monitor is a device that tracks your blood sugar levels in real time throughout the day and night. So they're typically used by people who have diabetes to help manage their condition by providing instant data after a meal. So, how did it become so common in the health and wellness space? If you look on Instagram today, almost every fitness influencer wears a CGM. But till a few years ago, it was used for people with diabetes and only if they had a prescription for it. So, obviously, the growing trend of non diabetics using CGMs has happened in the last few years. A lot of companies are making tons of money selling CGMs to people who don't need it, in the claim that monitoring your glucose levels is the key for better health, performance, longevity, you live longer, etc. But is this really necessary?
So let's look at the science. What is a blood sugar spike? What causes it? And is this a normal phenomenon? So when you eat, your body breaks down the carbohydrates into glucose, which then enters your bloodstream. This is a completely normal process that provides your cells with the energy they need to function. The glucose is basically sugar, and when it's present in the blood, it's called blood sugar. So obviously, every time we eat, we are going to have a blood sugar spike. The word spike is the problem because it automatically assumes that it's a bad thing, when in reality, a blood sugar spike is your body doing exactly what it's supposed to give your cells the energy they need. So let's understand this, that a blood sugar spike is a totally normal response, right? Now, what happens in the case of someone with type 2 diabetes is that they eat a meal which has some carbohydrates. This gets converted into glucose and increases the blood sugar. Then the pancreas releases insulin, which is a hormone that helps the blood sugar get into your cells where it can be used for energy or stored for later use. But if someone has type 2 diabetes, they most likely have insulin resistance, which means that the insulin isn't working the way it's supposed to. Therefore, the glucose continues to stay in the bloodstream without being able to enter the cells. So this is basically someone with type 2 diabetes. But if you're a normal person with no insulin resistance, then the chain of events would go like this. You basically eat something with carbohydrates. This gets converted into glucose. The glucose raises your blood sugar. This prompts the pancreas to release the insulin hormone, and then the insulin opens the doors for the cells to receive the glucose. The analogy is a simple one, and I remember it for years. Basically, think of insulin like a key, and the cells are the lock. So it's safe to say that most humans will experience a blood sugar spike every time they eat. But the important thing is for how long. If you're someone who does not have diabetes, then in a few hours after eating your meal, your blood sugar would have definitely gone down to its normal level. There are so many claims that glucose spikes leads to inflammation, fatigue, mood swings, etc. But the studies do not support this, and I'm going to link a few of them below. In fact, blood sugar rise is also a totally normal response when we engage in high impact exercise. Does that mean we should stop exercising? Our bodies are resilient machines. They are meant to deal with blood sugar spikes. The problem only arises if our blood sugar is elevated for long periods of time over the course of months or years. I actually think there are more downsides than any benefits for a non-diabetic to use a CGM. There are studies showing that using a CGM when you don't have diabetes can lead to unnecessary anxiety. Constantly monitoring your blood sugar can make you overly focused on the numbers rather than listening to your body's natural hunger and fullness cues. For example, when I used a CGM for a few weeks, I found that my perfectly healthy smoothie with bananas, protein powder, greens, and veggies elevated my blood sugar levels. If I didn't understand the science, I would automatically assume that this smoothie is actually causing me harm because my blood sugar has risen so much. But in reality, those foods are perfectly healthy and should in fact be consumed by everyone. So a blood sugar spike is such a primitive way to look at health without understanding the nutrient density of the foods we are consuming. Like, what if I ate a donut and my blood sugar didn't rise? Does that mean that the donut is healthier? Obviously not. And that's where we have to be mindful. We have to remember the basics that complex carbohydrates and fruits and veggies are good for us. Don't let the blood sugar spikes fool you into thinking that they're not. Because there's also no evidence that says having a flat blood sugar line is beneficial for us long term. Like I said, our bodies are meant to deal with blood sugar spikes. So here's my practical advice. What should you do instead? If you have type 2 diabetes, then a CGM can help, but only if it's accompanied by a healthy diet. We have to remember that if we eat something and our glucose does not spike, this is not a good indicator of whether the food is health promoting or not. For example, a breakfast of bacon and eggs might not spike your blood sugar, but it has other implications like being high in saturated fat and increases your risk of cardiovascular issues. As for the people who don't have diabetes, we need to focus on three things. Number one, maintain a diet high in fiber, fruits, and vegetables. Fiber is one of the most important nutrients that is often overlooked and has so many health benefits. Number two is make sure you're exercising 3 to 5 times a week. I recommend some cardio and weight training, especially for women as we age. And number three is to have some way to manage your stress levels. This could be anything that works for you: meditation, yoga, breath work, long walks, anything. So, in conclusion, if you don't have diabetes, you don't need to buy a CGM. Save your money, spend it on a gym, on healthy food, or anything that will benefit you long term and prevent you from getting type 2 diabetes. So now it's time to talk about our second topic of the day. This is one I get a lot of questions on. Does oat milk cause inflammation? Is it healthy? Etc. So we all know that in recent years, oat milk has become super popular, especially among those who are dairy-free, vegan, lactose intolerant, etc. It's honestly a really good option for those considering the switch from dairy milk to plant milk because it's creamy and delicious. Personally, it's one of my favorite plant milks for coffee, although I prefer soy milk in my smoothies because of its higher protein content. So I've had a few people messaging me saying oat milk causes inflammation, and I think this concern often stems from the idea that seed oils or vegetable oils are inflammatory because oat milk contains some seed oils. So let's talk about that. So what are seed oils? Seed oils are basically sunflower oil, rapeseed oil, canola oil, and similar oils which contain omega-6 fatty acids, also known as linoleic acid. There has been a lot of research around seed oils, and the current data is pretty clear. Omega-6 fatty acids do not inherently increase inflammation, although I'm not saying go out and drink a bottle of oil, but having a little bit of oil is not going to harm you. Of course, all oils are calorie dense and should not take up a large part of your diet. Also, we all know that consuming seed oils from chips, biscuits, and other processed foods can be problematic. However, in the context of oat milk, a 100 ml glass of oat milk contains just 2 ml of rapeseed oil or canola oil. Even if I consume 300 milliliter a day, that's only about a teaspoon of oil, which is really not that much. For me, I consume oat milk once a day with my coffee, and I use about 50 to 100 ml, and I really don't think that's a problem. But what about calcium and vitamin D? A lot of people ask me, are plant-based milks like oat milk a good source of calcium and vitamin D? Obviously, we all know that cow's milk is a good source of calcium, containing about 300 milligrams of calcium per cup. Plant-based milks also do contain some calcium, especially if they're fortified with calcium. A lot of brands today are fortifying their plant milks, and I think this is a great solution. The brand I normally use has about 240 milligrams of calcium per cup of oat milk, which makes it almost the same as a glass of cow milk. I also want to add something. The idea that we can only get calcium from cow's milk is something that is completely false. Plant-based foods like leafy greens, legumes, beans, lentils are really good sources of calcium. So even if I don't drink a cup of fortified plant milk, I'm making sure I get my calcium from whole plant-based foods. Okay, so what about vitamin D? I'm sure you will be surprised to know that almost all dairy products are actually fortified with vitamin D. Vitamin D is not naturally present in cow's milk. In fact, vitamin D is a hormone that our body makes when it's exposed to sunlight. So some foods that are high in vitamin D are eggs, fatty fish, etc. But there aren't too many plant-based sources of food that are high in vitamin D. So a lot of countries today are fortifying their products with vitamin D so that people don't get deficient. So coming back to oat milk, a lot of brands are fortifying their oat milk and other plant-based milks with vitamin D, which I think is a great thing. Again, with vitamin D, it is an essential nutrient. So I advise all my clients to get their vitamin D levels checked. And if you are deficient, then please use a supplement. Also, I think deciding whether something is healthy or not can be a little complicated. When it comes to milk, whether it's dairy or plant-based, there are several factors to consider beyond just information. For me, I choose to consume oat and soy milk because they taste good enough and I can afford them. And more importantly, it's an easy way for me to support the welfare of cows and reduce my carbon footprint. My personal perspective is that I love cows and the treatment they receive at a typical dairy farm is at best unkind. And this happens all over the world for our insane demand for dairy products. It's just not possible to treat the animals with compassion when there's so much money involved. The dairy industries are worth trillions of dollars and the cows are just commodities. I'm obviously not going to go into the gory details of a typical dairy farm, but I've seen it firsthand and it isn't something I want to support, especially when there are so many alternatives to cow milk today. Also, when it comes to sustainability, I'm also aware that globally, 1 liter of cow's milk produces around 3 times as much carbon emissions as plant-based milk. This is because cows release methane, which is a potent greenhouse gas, through their bulbs and manure. On the other hand, plant-based milks, especially oat milk, not only releases fewer emissions but also requires less land and water and is more sustainable. I also want to make it clear that I don't mean to imply that avoiding dairy is an easy choice, especially if you live in India, where it's such a big part of our culture and our food. Most Indians also believe that the same cruelty doesn't apply to Indian dairy farms, which is far from true. In fact, it couldn't be any worse. India is one of the largest exporters of beef because of our humongous dairy industry. Also, I don't live under this delusion that by not drinking dairy, I live a cruelty-free life. The coffee I put my milk in likely comes from land that's been deforested. The cafes use single-use plastic lids, and my clothes come from industrial cotton fields. But I'm still trying to do my best by reducing plastic, composting, and being mindful of my everyday choices. And I think every step matters, even if it's a small one like choosing plant-based milks over cow milk. Because the truth is that for me, if I choose to buy dairy, it is choosing to cause harm to the animals, wildlife, and our planet. So in conclusion, oat milk does not cause inflammation. It is a healthy alternative to dairy milk for many people. It also offers environmental benefits and it aligns with ethical consideration for animal welfare. As with any dietary choice, it's about balance and making informed decisions. So, if you found this episode valuable, please subscribe, share it with a friend who might benefit, and let's make wellness a part of our everyday lives. And hope you have a good week.